Allow me to begin on a personal note. This is a picture of me taken around the time that my grandmother was diagnosed with end-stage heart disease and sent home to die. She already had so many bypass surgeries, basically run out of plumbing at some point, confined in a wheelchair, crushing chest pain. Her life was over at age 65. Then she heard about this guy, Nathan Pritikin, one of our early lifestyle medicine pioneers. And what happened next is actually detailed in Pritikin's biography. My grandma was one of the death's door people, like Francis Greger, which maybe you can see if you've been eating your carrots. I doubt it, though. Francis Greger, who arrived at one of Pritikin's early sessions in a wheelchair. Mrs. Greger had heart disease, angina, claudication. Her condition so bad she could no longer walk without great pain in her chest and legs. Within 3 weeks, though, she was not only out of her wheelchair, she was walking 10 miles a day. It's a picture of my grandma at her grandson's wedding 15 years after doctors had abandoned her to die. She was given her medical death sentence at age 65. Thanks to a healthy diet, was able to enjoy another 31 years on this planet till age 96 to enjoy her 6 grandkids, including me. That's why I went into medicine. Now, years later, when Dr. Dean Ornish published his landmark lifestyle heart trial proving something called quantitative angiography, that indeed heart disease could be reversed without drugs, without surgery, just a plant-based diet and other healthy lifestyle behaviors, I assume this is going to be the game changer. I mean, my family had seen it with their own eyes, but here it was, in black and white, published in some of the most prestigious medical journals in the world, yet nothing happened. So wait a second, if effectively the cure to our number one killer could get lost down some rabbit hole and ignored, what else might there be in the medical literature that could help my patients but just didn't have a corporate budget driving its promotion? Well, I made it my life's mission to find out. For those of you unfamiliar with my work, every year I read through every issue of every English language nutrition journal in the world, so busy folks like you don't have to. I then compile all the most interesting, most groundbreaking, most practical findings, new videos and articles I upload every day to my nonprofit site, nutritionfacts.org. Everything on the website is free. There's no ads, no corporate sponsorship, strictly non-commercial, not selling anything, just put it up as a public service, as a labor of love, as a tribute to my grandmother. New videos and articles uploaded every day on the latest in evidence-based nutrition. What a concept. So where did Pritikin get his evidence from? Well, a network of missionary hospitals set up throughout sub-Saharan Africa uncovered what may be one of the most important advances in health by one of our most important medical figures of the 20th century, Dr. Dennis Burke, the fact that many of our major and commonest diseases were universally rare, like heart disease, for example. In the African population of Uganda, coronary artery disease almost non-existent. I know, it's amazing. Wait a second, number one cause of death, almost non-existent. What were they eating? Well, they were eating lots of vegetables and grains and greens, and their protein almost exclusively from plant sources. And they had the cholesterol levels to prove it, very similar to what one sees in kind of modern day plant eaters at 141. So wait a second, maybe they were just dying early from something else, never lived long enough to get heart disease. No, here's age-matched heart attack rates in Uganda versus St. Louis. Out of 632 autopsies in Uganda, only 1 myocardial infarction out of 632 age and gender matched. Autopsies in Missouri, 136 myocardial infarctions, more than 100 times the rate of our leading killer. In fact, they're so blown away, went back, did another 800 autopsies in Uganda, still just that one small healed infarct, meaning it wasn't even the cause of death. Out of 1,427 patients, less than 1 in 1,000. Whereas here, heart disease is an epidemic. Here's a list of the diseases commonly found here and in places that eat and live like the U.S., but were rare or even non-existent in populations centered around whole plant foods. These are among our most common diseases, like obesity, for example. Hiatal hernia, the most common stomach problem. Varicose veins and hemorrhoids, two most common venous problems. Colorectal cancer, leading cancer killer. Diverticulosis, number one disease of the intestines. Appendicitis, number one cause of non-emergency surgery, abdominal surgery. Gallbladder disease, number one cause of non-emergency abdominal surgery, as well as ischemic heart disease, our commonest cause of death here, but a rarity among plant-based populations, which suggests that heart disease may be a choice, like cavities. If you look at the teeth of people who lived 10,000 years before the invention of the toothbrush, pretty much no cavities. Didn't brush a day in their lives. No flossing. Yet, no cavities. Why? Because candy bars hadn't been invented yet. So wait a second, why do people continue to get cavities when we know they're preventable through changes in our diet? Well, simple, because the pleasure people derive from dessert may outweigh the cost and discomfort of the dentist chair. Look, that's fine. If you're an adult, you think the benefits outweigh the risk for you and your family, then, go for it. I certainly enjoy the occasional indulgence. I've got a good dental plan. But what if instead of the plaque on our teeth, we're talking about the plaque building up inside of our arteries, another disease that can be prevented through changes in our diet? Okay, now, what are the consequences for you and your family? Now we're not talking about scraping tartar anymore. Now we're talking life and death. It's still up to each of us to make our own decisions as to what to eat and how to live, but we should make these choices consciously, educating ourselves about the predictable consequences of our actions. Atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries, is a disease that begins in childhood. By age 10, nearly all kids raised in the standard American diet already have what are called fatty streaks in their arteries, the first stage of the disease. These streaks then turn into plaques in our 20s, get worse in our 30s, and then can start killing us off. In our heart, it's called a heart attack. In our brain, it's called a stroke. So if there's anyone here today older than age 10, then the question is not whether or not to eat healthy to prevent heart disease. It's whether you want to reverse the heart disease you already have, whether you know it or not. Is that even possible, though? When researchers took people with heart disease, put them on a kind of plant-based diet, followed by populations that did not get heart disease, their hope was, look, maybe we could slow it down, perhaps even stop it. But something miraculous happened. As soon as people stopped eating artery clogging diets, their bodies were able to start dissolving some of that plaque away, opening up arteries without drugs, without surgery, suggesting their bodies wanted to be healthy all along, but were just never given the chance. This remarkable blood flow on the left that few can see, but it's there, this is to the heart muscle itself. It was after just 3 weeks on a plant-based diet. Let me share with you what's been called the best-kept secret in all of medicine. Best-kept secret in medicine is that sometimes, given the right conditions, the body can actually heal itself. If you whack your shin really hard on a coffee table, you can get all red hot, painful, swollen, inflamed, but will heal naturally if you just stand back, let your body work its magic, right? But what if you kept whacking your shin in the same place day after day? In fact, 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Yeah. You never heal. You'd go to your doctor and be like, oh, my shin hurts. They'd be like, no problem. Whip out their pad, write a prescription for painkillers. You're still whacking your shin 3 times a day. Oh, it still really hurts, but it feels so much better with those pain pills on board. Thank heavens for modern medicine. It's like when people take nitroglycerin for, crushing chest pain. Tremendous relief, but not doing anything to treat the underlying cause of the disease. Our body wants to come back to health if we let it, but if we keep re-damaging ourselves 3 times a day, we may never heal. It's like smoking. One of the most amazing things I learned in all my medical training was that within 15 years of stopping smoking, your lung cancer risk approaches that of a lifelong non-smoker. Isn't that amazing? Like your lungs can clear out all that tar, and eventually it's almost as if you never started smoking at all. Right? And every morning of our smoking life, that healing process starts until, wham, first cigarette of the day. Re-injuring our lungs with every puff, just like we can re-injure our arteries with every bite. When all we had to do all along, the miracle cure, is to just stand back, get out of the way, stop re-injuring ourselves, and let our body's natural healing processes bring us back towards health. Sure, so the human body is a self-healing machine. Sure, you can choose moderation and hit yourself with a smaller hammer. But why beat yourself up at all? This is nothing new. American Heart Journal, 1977. Cases like Mr. F.W. here, heart disease so bad, couldn't even make it to the mailbox. Started eating healthier. A few months later, he was climbing mountains, no pain. That's nice. Now, there are these fancy new classes of anti-angina drugs on the market now. It costs thousands of dollars a year, but the highest dose may be able to extend exercise duration as long as 33.5 seconds. Yes. It does not look like those choosing the drug route are going to be climbing mountains anytime soon. Right? So plant-based diets aren't just safer and cheaper, they can work better because you're treating the underlying cause of the disease. Heart disease killer number 1 in this country. Killer number 2 is cancer. What happens if you put cancer on a plant-based diet? Well, Dr. Dean Ornish and colleagues used the same diet to reverse the progression, on average, of early-stage prostate cancer, and no wonder. If you take people eating the standard American diet, drip their blood onto cancer cells growing in the petri dish, you can slow cancer growth down a little bit. But you put people on a plant-based diet for a year, and their blood can do this. The blood circulating throughout the bodies of those eating plant-based diets is nearly 8 times the stopping power when it comes to suppressing cancer cell growth. Now, this is for men and prostate cancer. I wanted to repeat this study with women and breast cancer, number 1 cancer killer specific to women. But look, they didn't want to wait a whole year to get the results. Women are dying now. So let's see what a plant-based diet can do after just 2 weeks. Against 3 different lines of human breast cancer. This is the before, cancer cell growth powering away at 100%. And this is after eating healthy for just 2 weeks. This is what's called a photomicrograph. I wish people could see this a little better, but this is a photograph taken under a microscope. What they did is they laid down a confluent layer of cancer, a carpet of breast cancer in a petri dish. Then they dripped the blood of women eating the standard American diet onto that cancer. You can see how it kind of, breaks the cancer up into these little cancer continents here. But then you take these same women, retest 2 weeks, put them on a plant-based diet, and retest 2 weeks later. And this is actually a Pritikin study, actually. Put them on a Pritikin diet for 2 weeks later and then retest. So lay down another layer of cancer, retest 2 weeks later. So they act as their own control, same women before and after, and all you're left with is this. You see there's just a few individual cancer cells left, their bodies cleaned up. Before and after just 2 weeks eating a Pritikin diet. Their bloodstream became that much more hostile to cancer. Suppressing cancer cell growth is nice. Getting rid of it's even better. This is what's called apoptosis, programmed cell death. Our body's able to kind of reprogram cancer cells, forcing them into early retirement. This is what's called tunnel imaging, measuring DNA fragmentation or cell death, where dying cancer cells show up as little white spots or little gray spots here. So, as you can see, even if you're a woman eating a pretty poor diet, you're not completely defenseless. Your body can knock off a few cancer cells. But then you take these same women, bring them here for 2 weeks, and 2 weeks later their blood can do that. It's like you're an entirely different person inside. The same blood now circulating throughout the bodies of these women gained the power to significantly slow down and stop breast cancer cell growth after just 2 weeks eating healthy. What kind of blood do we want in our body? What kind of immune system? Do we want blood that kind of, rolls over when new cancer cells pop up? Or do we want blood circulating to every nook and cranny in our body with the power to slow down and stop it. Now, this dramatic strengthening of cancer and exercise was cancer defenses after 2 weeks of diet and exercise, right? This is a Pritikin study. So as you all know who are here, it's not just eating healthy. They have you over in the gym. Now, in this study, though, they were just having people doing really kind of moderate exercise, 30 to 60 minutes walking every day. So wait a second. If you do two things, diet and exercise, how do you know what role the diet played? So researchers decided to put it to the test. Pritikin researchers decided to put it to the test. Here's what we saw before. Healthy plant-based diet and exercise, in this case on average for 14 years. 14 years of a healthy diet and exercise. That's kind of this is measuring cancer cell clearance. So you can compare that to the cancer-stopping power of your average sedentary American. There's a little cheeseburger in their lap. You can't see that, but which is essentially non-existent. All right, but here's the interesting group in the middle. Well, what about 14-year standard American diet, but 14 years daily, strenuous, hour-long exercise like calisthenics? They wanted to know if you exercise long enough, if you exercise hard enough, can you rival some strolling plant eaters over here? And the answer is exercise helped, no question. But literally 5,000 hours in the gym, no match for a plant-based diet. This is the same tunnel imaging we saw before. Even if, so even if you're a couch potato, living off of fried potatoes, you're not totally defenseless, you can kill off a few cancer cells. You exercise for 5,000 hours, you can kill off cancer cells left and right, but nothing appears to kick more cancer tush than a plant-based diet. And this may be because of animal protein. Meat, egg white, and dairy protein increases the levels of cancer-promoting growth hormone in our body called IGF-1, which has involved the progression and acquisition of malignant tumors. But you start eating healthy and your IGF-1 levels drop. If you start and if you continue eating healthy, they drop even further, and your levels of IGF-1 binding protein go up. IGF-1 binding protein is one of our body's kind of emergency brakes. One of the ways our body protects itself from cancer, protects itself from excessive growth. Now, sure, in as few as 2 weeks, you can drop your body's production of IGF-1. But wait a second, what about all the IGF-1 you had circulating in your body from the bacon and eggs you had 3 weeks ago? Well, your liver releases this snatch squad of binding proteins to type any excess IGF-1, pull it out of the system. Your protective levels go up within weeks. Benefits continue to accrue the longer you eat healthy. This experimentally nailed IGF-1 as the villain. Plant-based diet and exercise, cancer cell growth drops, cancer cell death shoots up. But here's the interesting column here. What if you add back to the cancer just the amount of IGF-1 you banish from your system because you started eating healthier? What happens? You erase the diet and exercise effect. It's almost as if you never started eating healthy at all. So the reason, one of the largest studies on diet and cancer in history found that the incidence of all cancers combined was lower among those eating more plant-based, maybe because they're eating less animal protein, less meat, egg white, and dairy protein, which means less IGF-1 in their system, which means less cancer growth. How much less cancer growth are we talking about? Well, if you take thousands of people followed for 18 years, found that those who eat a lot of animal protein during middle age have 75% increased risk of dying prematurely in that time, and a 4-fold risk of dying specifically from cancer. But not all protein, specifically animal protein, which of course makes sense given the IGF-1 story we talked about. The academic institution where this study was done sent out a press release with a memorable opening line: "That chicken wing you're eating could be as deadly as a cigarette." Explaining that, look, a 4-fold increased risk of dying from cancer, I mean, that's comparable to what one might get smoking cigarettes. So wait a second, what was the response in the medical community to this revelation that diets high meat, eggs, and dairy could be harmful to the health of smoking? Well, one nutrition scientist said it was potentially dangerous to tell people about this study. Why? Because a smoker might think, why bother quitting smoking? My ham and cheese sandwich is just as bad for me. So let's not tell anyone about this whole meat and dairy thing. Shh. This reminds me of a famous Philip Morris cigarette ad that tried to downplay the risk by saying, hey, You think secondhand smoke is bad, increasing risk of lung cancer 19%. Well, hey, drinking 1 or 2 glasses of milk every day, maybe 3 times as bad, 62% increased risk of lung cancer. Or doubling your risk frequently cooking with oil. Or tripling your risk of heart disease by eating non-vegetarian. Or multiplying your risk 6-fold if you eat lots of meat and dairy. So, they conclude, let's keep some perspective here. The risk from secondhand smoke may be well below that of other everyday activities, so breathe deep. That's like saying, yeah, don't worry about getting stabbed, because getting shot's so much worse. How about neither? 2 risks don't make a right. Of course, you'll note that Philip Morris stopped throwing dairy under the bus once they purchased Kraft Foods. Just saying. All right. So every year, the CDC compiles the top 15 causes of death. So I just thought I'd go through a few of them, talk about the role diet may play in preventing, arresting, and even reversing some of our leading killers. We already went through that. Oh, here we go. This is what I wanted to get to. I'm going to touch on diabetes. I'm going to skip down to number 7. The 7th leading killer in the United States is type 2 diabetes, a disease we've known we can both prevent, arrest, and reverse with a plant-based diet since the 1930s. So this is 40 years before Pritikin got his act together. Put a bunch of diabetics on a plant-based diet, and in a 5-year period, about a quarter were able to get off their insulin altogether. But plant-based diets are relatively low-calorie diets. I mean, maybe their diabetes just got better because they lost so much weight. To tease that out, what you'd have to do is put people on a healthy diet, but force them to eat so much food that they don't lose any weight. Then we could see if the plant-based diet had specific benefits beyond just all the easy weight loss. Well, we'd have to wait a few decades, but here it is. Subjects were weighed every day. If they started to lose weight, they were made to eat more food. In fact, so much more food that they had problems eating it all. They're like, oh, not another salad. Ugh. But eventually they adapted, so no weight loss, despite restricting meat, eggs, dairy, and junk food. And if you can see, you can't see this is a Pritikin study. These are all Pritikin researchers. So with 0 weight loss, was there still a benefit for their diabetes? Well, insulin needs were cut 60%, and half the diabetics ended off all their insulin altogether. Wow. How many years did that take? No, 16 days. 16 days later. So we're talking diabetics who have been diabetic for 20 years, injecting 20 units of insulin a day, then 13 days later on none. Diabetes for 20 years, then off all insulin in less than 2 weeks. Diabetes for 20 years because no one had told them about a plant-based diet. For decades, they were 13 days away at any time. Here's participant number 15, 32 units of insulin on the control diet, and then 18 days later on none. Lower blood sugars on 32 units less insulin. That's the power of plants. And remember, this was the 0 weight loss. Their body just started working that much better. And what are the side effects? How about cholesterol dropping like a rock to under 150? Again, only about 2 weeks' time. So just like, modest changes in diet will only net you modest benefits in terms of cholesterol reduction. How modest do you want your diabetes? Asking diabetics to make moderate changes in their diet can leave them with moderate blindness. Moderate, everything in moderation is a truer statement than many people realize. Leave them with moderate kidney failure, moderate amputation, maybe just a few toes or something. Moderation in all things, not necessarily a good thing. All right, let's go back. Remember this study, this whole diets high in meat, eggs, and dairy, harmful to health as smoking, supposedly suggests, wow, you really can't see that. Supposedly said those who eat a lot of meat, eggs, or dairy 4 times as likely to die from cancer or diabetes. But you look at the actual study, you see that's simply not true. Those eating lots of animal protein didn't have 4 times the risk of dying from diabetes. They had 73 times the risk of dying from diabetes. Now, those that chose moderation, only eating a moderate amount of animal protein, only had 23 times the risk of death from diabetes. We already did this. Let me move on down. All right, let us move to high blood pressure. 78 million Americans affected, our 13th leading killer. And as we age, our pressures get higher and higher, such that by age 60, the majority of us are hypertensive. So wait a second, if most of us get high blood pressure when we get older, maybe it's less a disease and more just a natural, inevitable consequence of aging. No, we've known since the 1920s that high blood pressure need not occur. This is one of the populations who really interested Nathan Pritikin. 1,000 people in rural Kenya had their blood pressures taken. The typical Kenyan diet is corn, beans, vegetables, fruit, greens. Our pressures go up as we get older, such that by age 60, most of us have high blood pressure. Their pressures go down. And the lower the better. We now have evidence even people under 120/80 may benefit from blood pressure reduction. You went to your doctor with 120/80, you get a gold star. But now we know even people with so-called normal blood pressure can benefit from blood pressure lowering. So the ideal blood pressure, the no benefit from reducing it further, blood pressure, 110/70. 110, I mean, is it even possible to get pressures down to 110/70? It's not just possible, it's normal for those eating healthy enough diets. 3 years at this rural Kenyan hospital, 1,800 patients were admitted. How many cases of high blood pressure did they find? 0. Wow, they must have low rates of heart disease, right? No, they had no rates of heart disease. Not a single case of arteriosclerosis, our #1 killer, was found. Rural China, same thing, 110/70 their entire lives, 70-year-olds, same average blood pressure as 16-year-olds. You say, wait a second, Asian diet, African diet, vastly different diets. What do they share in common? Plant-based, day-to-day with meat only eaten on special occasions. So wait a second, how do we know it's the plant-based nature of their diet that was so protective? Because in the Western world, according to the American Heart Association, the only folks really getting it down that low on average are those eating strictly plant-based diets, coming in at an average of 110/65. This is the largest study of plant-based eaters to date. It's the Adventist II study looking at 89,000 Californians, comparing non-vegetarians to so-called semi-vegetarians or flexitarians, those who eat meat. So I would consider a Pritikin diet to be a kind of a semi-vegetarian diet, although in this case, the semi-vegetarian is a serving of meat or less per week. So Pritikin kind of be right between here. Versus a diet that has no meat except fish, versus a diet that has no meat at all, versus a diet that has no meat, eggs, or dairy. And these were Adventist non-vegetarians. It's important to realize that. And so they have this sense that the body is a temple, and so, you know, they don't eat a lot of meat, they eat lots of fruits and vegetables, they don't smoke, they exercise a lot. This is a really healthy cohort of meat eaters, but still, we see this drop-wise, this stepwise drop in risk the more and more plant-based ones gets in terms of high blood pressure, same thing with diabetes, same thing with obesity. So sure, you can throw the vast majority of your risk out the window eating completely plant-based, but what's important about this slide is it's not all or nothing, it's not black or white. Any movement we can make along this spectrum towards eating healthier, we can accrue significant health benefits. You can show this experimentally. You take vegetarians, you give them meat, pay them enough to eat it, and their blood pressures go up, or you take people who already eat meat, you remove meat from their diet, blood pressures go down within 7 days, and this is after the vast majority of them. We're talking about 90% had to stop or lower their blood pressure medications. They had to. I mean, you can't treat the cause. I mean, you can't have normal blood pressure and be on multiple blood pressure pills. You'll drop your pressures too low. It could be dangerous, right? That's why right here at Pritikin, after a few days, you need to start lowering your high blood pressure medications, because otherwise it could be dangerous. So lower pressures on fewer drugs. That's the power of plants. So, does the American Heart Association recommend a no-meat diet? No, they recommend this low-meat diet, so-called DASH diet. You say, wait a second. When the DASH diet was being created, were they just not aware of this landmark research done by Harvard's Frank Sachs? No, they were aware. The chair of the design committee that came up with the DASH diet was Frank Sachs. See, the DASH diet was created with the number one goal of capturing the blood pressure lowering benefits of a vegetarian diet, yet contain enough animal products to make it palatable to the general population. See, they didn't think the public could handle the truth. Now, you can see what they were thinking. Look, just like drugs never work unless you actually take them, diets never work unless you actually eat them. And so they're like, look, we can't tell everyone to eat strictly plant-based. No one's going to do that. So if we kind of soft pedal the message, come up with some kind of compromise diet, well, then on a population scale, we'll do more good. Okay. Tell that to the 1,000 American families a day that lose a loved one to high blood pressure. Maybe it's time to start telling the American public the truth. Most deaths in the United States are preventable and related to what? To nutrition. According to the Global Burden of Disease Study, this is the largest study of human disease risk factors in human history, funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The number one cause of death, diet. Just trust me there. Number one cause of disability, diet. Now bumping tobacco smoking, this is tobacco, to number two, cigarettes now only kill about 500,000 Americans every year, whereas diet kills hundreds of thousands more. So if most deaths are preventable related to nutrition, now obviously nutrition, number one thing taught in medical school, right? I mean, it's the number one thing your doctor talks to you about at every visit, right? Wait a second, how could there be this disconnect between the science and the practice of medicine? Well, let me leave you with kind of a thought experiment to answer that question. Imagine yourself a smoker back in the 1950s. You know, back in the 50s, the average per capita cigarette consumption, 4,000 cigarettes a year, meaning the average person walking around half pack a day, on average. The media was telling people to smoke. Famous athletes agreed. Even Santa Claus wanted you to smoke. I mean, look, you wanted to keep fit and stay slender, so you make sure to smoke and eat lots of hot dogs to stay trim and eat lots of sugar to stay slim and trim. A lot better than that apple there. I don't know if you can see that. I mean, sheesh, right? Although apples do connote goodness and freshness, reads one internal tobacco industry memo, which brings up many possibilities for youth oriented. They want to make apple-flavored cigarettes for kids. Shameless. For digestion's sake, you smoke. I mean, no curative power is claimed by Philip Morris, but hey, better be safe than sorry, and smoke. Blow in her face and she'll follow you anywhere. No woman ever says, no, they're so round, so firm, so fully packed. After all, John Wayne smoked them until they got lung cancer and died. Now, back then, even the paleo folks were smoking, and so were the doctors. Now, this is not to say there wasn't controversy within the medical field. Sure, you know, some doctors smoked Camels, but others preferred Lucky, so there was a little disagreement there. The leader of the U.S. Senate agreed. Who wouldn't want to give their throat a vacation? Not a single case of throat irritation. How could there be when cigarettes are just as pure as the water you drink? Maybe up in Flint, Michigan. But don't worry, if you do get irritated, your doctor can just write you a prescription for cigarettes. This is in the Journal of the American Medical Association. So when the American Medical Association is saying smoking on balance is good for you, not neutral, but good for you, and the AMA is saying that, where could you turn back then if you just wanted the facts? What's the new data advanced by science? Well, she was too tired for fun, and then she smoked a Camel. Babe Ruth spoke of proof positive medical signs, that is when he still could speak, before he died of throat cancer. Now, if by some miracle there was some smokingfacts.org website back then that could deliver the science directly, bypassing commercially corruptible institutional filters, you would have become aware of studies like this. This is an Adventist study out of California, published in 1958, showing that non-smokers had at least 90% less lung cancer than smokers. This wasn't the first one. Famed surgeon Michael DeBakey was asked why his studies back in the 30s linking smoking and lung cancer were simply ignored. He had to remind people what it was like back then. We were a smoking society. It was everywhere. It was in the movies, medical meetings where one heavy haze of smoke. Smoking was, in a word, normal. So, back to our thought experiment. If you're a smoker in the 50s, in the know, what do you do? I mean, with access to the science, you realize the best available balance of evidence suggests your smoking habit, not so good for you. So do you change, or do you wait? If you wait until your doctor tells you, between puffs, to quit, you could have cancer by then. If you wait until the powers that be officially recognize it, like the Surgeon General did in the subsequent decade, you could be dead by then. It took more than 7,000 studies and the deaths of countless smokers before the first Surgeon General's report against smoking came out. You'd think maybe after the first 6,000 studies, it could give people a little heads up or something. Powerful industry. Right? One wonders how many people are currently dying needlessly from dietary diseases. Maybe we should have stopped smoking after the 700th study like this. As a smoker in the 50s, on one hand, you had all of society, the government, the medical profession itself telling you to smoke. And on the other hand, all you had was the science. If you're even aware of studies like this, let's fast forward 55 years. You know, there's a new Adventist study out of California warning Americans about something else they may be putting in their mouth, and of course not just one study, put all the studies together. Significantly lower mortality from all causes put together, many of our dread diseases, significantly lower among those eating more plant-based. So, instead of someone going along with America's smoking habits in the 50s, imagine you or someone you know going along with America's eating habits today. What do you do? I mean, with access to the science, you realize the best available balance of evidence suggests that eating habits are not so good for you. So do you change, or do you wait? If you wait until your doctor tells you between bites to change, it could be too late. In fact, even after the Surgeon General's report came out, the American Medical Association still dragged their feet. They officially came out and refused to endorse the Surgeon General's report. Why? Couldn't have been because they were just handed a $10 million check from the tobacco industry? Maybe. Okay, so you know why the AMA was sucking up to the tobacco industry. Why weren't more individual doctors speaking out? There were a few ahead of their time speaking up against industries killing millions, but why not more? Maybe it's because the majority of physicians themselves smoke cigarettes. Just like the majority of physicians today continue to eat foods that are contributing to our epidemics of dietary disease. What was the AMA's rallying cry back then? Everything in moderation. Extensive scientific studies have proven smoking in moderation, oh, that's fine. Sound familiar? The food industry used the same tobacco industry tactics, twisting the science, misinformation. The same scientists for hire paid to downplay the risks of cigarette smoke and toxic chemicals are the same paid for by the National Confectioners Association to downplay the risks of candy, and the same paid for by the meat industry to downplay the risks of meat. Animal foods and processed foods kill at least 14 million people every year. Those of us involved in this evidence-based nutrition revolution, of which the Pritikin Center is a key part, we're talking 14 million lives in the balance. So plant-based eating can be considered kind of the nutritional equivalent of stopping smoking. How long do we have to wait, though, before the CDC says, don't wait for open-heart surgery to start eating healthy as well? Until the system changes, we need to take personal responsibility for our own health, for our family's health. We can't wait until society catches up to the science again, because it's a matter of life and death. Dr. Kim Williams recently became president of the American College of Cardiology, kind of the official professional association of cardiologists in this country. He was asked in an interview why he himself follows the same study he recommends to all his patients, a strictly plant-based diet. "I don't mind dying," Dr. Williams replied. "I just don't want it to be my own fault." Thank you so much, everybody. Questions? Yes.
I was just wondering your thoughts on some of these non-dairy products that are available in the supermarket.
Sure.
Like coconut yogurts and almond yogurts that have a substantial amount of fillers and crack and sugar and other
Sugar. Yeah, sugar is the big thing. So most yogurts, I mean, it's just like candy, right? I mean, the amount of sugar content. Now, in the dairy world, they've had this Greek yogurt phenomenon where this is like yogurt without the sugar, but only until recently has there been any non-dairy Greek yogurts. But just recently, Kite Hill, which is an almond yogurt company, came out with a unsweetened, and there's another one. There's a cashew-based yogurt now also with an unsweetened. So finally, that's kind of nice. They actually have, Now look, it's a processed food, right? I mean, so instead of taking a nice cashew, they remove a lot of the fiber and stuff, and okay. But certainly much better than the kind of dairy equivalent, because you don't have the animal protein that increase your IGF-1, increase your cancer risk. Yes?
Do you think with the founding of that new PAC, I think for physical, it's Physicians for Ethical, I forget what the name of it is, but it's like a political action committee for...
Wait a second. Physicians and ethical in the same sentence? Are you sure?
I was reading it recently in Bench News, I think, about a PAC that was just formed that was basically to fight against big dairy, big meat.
Wow.
And they try to...
Cool. I have not heard.
I was going to say, do you think with that kind of formation of a committee like that,
Right.
do you think we're going to move the dial more?
So, political action committees, right, is a way to kind of secretly give, politicians a lot of money. And I'm afraid that no matter how many ethical physicians they are, I don't think it's a big organization, but no matter how big the PAC is, we will be subsumed by big pharma, right? Which is the #1 lobby, actually in the country. More money is spent by the drug companies to lobby than gas and oil and like all these who we think are this big, So, and what about animal ag, right? Which is hugely powerful. And the processed food industry. It's a $1 trillion industry, right? And so we have some of the biggest players, the biggest lobbyists. And so, so if a politician gets a $10 check in the mail from Physicians for Ethical whatever, that's awesome. But I'm afraid it's just not going to, But what can change is we can vote them out. If there's enough understanding of what's going on, right? We can force our politicians to, put in place healthier options. So we could subsidize healthier. So right now, your tax dollars go to the sugar industry. We subsidize sugar. And they go, and to corn and soy to make animal feed cheap. And so you can get, burgers on the dollar menu, right? So wait a second. And then, of course, we have this, $1 trillion healthcare bill. Why not? And wouldn't it make more sense if you're going to put money to anything? If you were going to take your tax dollars and give it to why not to the fruits and vegetables? Why not make fruits and vegetables cheaper, right? So we just have these kind of skewed priorities that only make sense because of the stranglehold that special interests have in Washington. But if Trump can become president. Anything is possible. So we should all view that as a very optimistic thing, right? Come on.
We just need Russian help.
Yes, if we can get Putin on board. Yes. Yes.
First of all, thank you for your work. Yeah, and your brilliance and the
thank
impact
you.
that you're making, because I think awareness is key. My question is about your research and things that you've been putting together in your brain about the microbiome.
Oh, yeah.
And we read a study recently from Stanford that talked about a plant-based diet and the gut, and how it's less about enzymes and digestion, and it's more about. I'm just curious what you know about it.
Stan Hazen's group at the Cleveland Clinic, right?
Humans didn't have enzymes. That was their study. The research was saying we couldn't digest food, plant glucose efficiently without having enough bacteria.
Oh, so there is a revolution going on in medicine. There's actually a few. One is epigenetics, talking about the role diet and other lifestyle changes can actually play in changing the expression of our genes. So regardless of what genes we were born with, we can turn some on, turn some off. That was landmark work done by Dr. Dean Ornish, following up on Pritikin's work. And also the microbiome. Little did we know how powerful the role that our gut bacteria could play. We used to think, gut bacteria just played a role in like gut health. So if you had inflammatory bowel disease, maybe or something. But now we realize it's systemic effects, both for good and for bad. And the reason this is such a revolution now is because the vast majority of our gut microbes are unculturable, meaning outside the body we can't get them to grow in a petri dish. And so we didn't even know what was in there until genetic fingerprinting techniques came along, and now we can say, oh, but there's thousands of bugs in there, and people have different bugs, and when you change diet, you can get these rapid shifts in gut. And we used to think they were relatively stable, like you're born with whatever guts, and it depends on whether you're cesarean or not, whether you're breastfed or not. You pretty much stay with the same bugs your whole life, completely thrown out the window. Now we realize one day we can rapidly shift. You change someone from like an all-meat diet to an all-plant diet, rapid shifts, literally 24, 48 hours. You can shift, and then you have totally different new bugs in there, and they all do all sorts of different things for both good and ill. And so we're now just discovering what exactly the intricacies and so kind of the smoking gun in the food microbiome world was the work at Cleveland Clinic with TMAO, trimethylamine oxide, which is this compound created by bad bugs in our gut when we eat carnitine, found in red meat, and choline, which is found in basically eggs, egg yolks, dairy, and seafood. So all along we were thinking, oh, you eat a lot of meat, you get heart disease because it's a cholesterol thing or something. But now we're realizing, no, there's this role. There's also a role played by this trimethylamine oxide, this nasty substance made by bad bugs. But what's interesting is that if you can take someone eating strictly plant-based, take a vegan, give them a steak. They make no TMAO. Why? Because they don't have steak-eating bugs in their gut. They don't have these bad bugs to create the TMAO. Now, if you gave them a steak every day, they'd eventually build up those bugs. But, so that is why that what it matters most what you eat day to day. It doesn't matter what you eat on your birthday or special occasions or holidays, but on a day-to-day basis, by eating healthy, we can maintain that same healthy gut microbiome may have positive effects on our immune system and even our mental health, all sorts of amazing things. So we're just now trying to piece that off. We've got a lot of videos on the microbiome, lots more coming up, but it really seems to be, so that is one of the reasons to explain why, wait a second, okay, I can see how a plant-based diet, no cholesterol, can help with the heart, but why does it also help protect against strokes? And also helps protect against your liver and your kidneys and diabetes. It seems like, how could it help with all those things? You say, well, originally we thought, well, look, all organs need circulation. So something that opens up your blood vessels, it doesn't just help you, it helps your brain, it helps everything, right? Kidneys, highly vascular organs, right? Lots of blood vessels. But now we realize, maybe one of the reasons is because the microbiome plays a role in everything, and the good bacteria eat two things. One is fiber, and two is resistant starch. Those are the two prebiotics. And they're only found in one place, and that's plant foods, and particularly whole plant foods.
So many probiotics on the market that are they're fed on dairy, God knows what else is in them, sugar. So things like kombucha. So you're saying the only two prebiotics that are proven is obviously plant fiber.
Fiber. And resistant starch, right. Found concentrated mostly in legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils. Also found in whole grains and other whole, healthy plant foods. And so the reason that we should concentrate on prebiotics and not probiotics is like, so probiotics, so if I've got a video coming out where I make this analogy, where if you have a shed of bunny rabbits in your backyard, and you want to grow bunny rabbits, right, and you feed them all pork rinds, and they all die, right? Then there's two things you can do. One, you can be like, I'll get some new bunnies. And so you go to the store and you get new bunnies. You keep feeding pork rinds and they die, but yeah, you just go buy new bunnies. That's probiotics, right? You just keep it. You feed them all the wrong stuff, they all die, but no, you take more, right? Or you could take and you could actually feed the rabbits some carrots, right? And feed them what they're supposed to be eating, and then then they just kind of grow and multiply on their own, right? It's just kind of a sustainable, it's a sustainable kind of thing. And so, yes, you can take probiotics every day for the rest of your life in hopes that a few will survive your, acid and get down there. But they're not going to grow unless you actually feed them. Unless you feed them, and what do they eat? Prebiotics, fiber, and resistant starch. If you eat it, so 97% of Americans don't even reach the recommended minimum daily intake of fiber. 97% of Americans, right? And that's, that's a measly, about 30 grams, depending on man or woman. So, and so no wonder we have these dysbiotic problems. We have all these gut problems. We have all these, and then we get all this TMAO, hurts our arteries, hurts our brain, hurts everything. So anyway, so that's one of the reasons why, wait a second, now it makes more sense why a plant-based diet, the only place you're going to get these prebiotics, right, all helps all these different organ systems at the same time. And so there's actually now work on fecal transplants, right? Why eat healthy when you can just go to the black market and get some vegan poop, and just, right? Right? And then now, if you then continue to eat your crappy diet, you'll have to get vegan poop every day. But it's amazing. So you can take obese people and you can put stool from lean people into obese people and they lose weight, eating the same amount of calories because they have different gut bacteria that use energy different. I mean, it's absolutely amazing stuff, but there's got to be a better way. Right? There's got to be a better way. But yes, all right. Be happy to sign books for everyone. There's something about lunch. Can we eat lunch?
So thank you very much.
Sure. Sure.
Thank you all for making it as well. So if you're not currently enrolled in the Pritikin program, we're an all-inclusive, medically supervised health and wellness resort where we teach people how to get healthy naturally by making changes to their exercise and eating habits. And if you've worked up an appetite with all this vegan food talk, we have a great lunch in the dining room, which is available for about $28 per person for the lunch buffet, and there are some other items as well. So you're welcome to stay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'll see you at lunch. If anybody bought their books, be happy to sign. We have some books.